Welcome back, Bears fans. I'm Jerry with Dub Bears Talk, and today we're going to be talking about my first thoughts on Shane Waldron getting fired. This is kind of my initial reaction. Honestly, I can't say I'm surprised. I think it seemed like every Bears fan wanted Eberflus and Shane Waldron fired. We just get Waldron for now. I was very skeptical to the decision because everybody in their overreacting ways definitely wanted them fired, wanted something new. But you have to remember that we have a rookie quarterback that we're trying to develop, and when you go and fire people, there's a possibility they'd have to relearn a new offense. Everybody that was upset that Eberflus was being very slow about is like, well, we're trying to make a decision. You got to make sure that there's going to be a guy that can call the plays and make sure that your quarterback doesn't regress. So I actually don't mind Matt Eberflus and the rest of the staff not knowing there was people. He should have been fired on Sunday after the three god awful performances. And I'm sure they've been looking into this, but I'm not going to overreact to that kind of stuff. Like, I am very reasonable in that regard to where I don't think you have to make sure everything's in place. And I think it would be even worse if we had Caleb learn a new offense for half the season, just to probably have to learn another one next year. So hopefully Thomas Brown, who's taking over, I'll have another video on him. So don't forget to subscribe and then like this video, because like I said, there's going to be a lot more Bears videos coming out, especially with all this shit unfolding how it is. Yeah, as long as Thomas Brown can take over and kind of limp us through the season, Caleb doesn't have to learn a completely new offense. I'm not opposed to all that. There's people that want to fire Matt Eberflus. I would look at that and say, as far as the defense, he's really not running that very poorly. I mean, honestly, obviously the defense has made its couple mistakes, and you've had the leadership issue with Matt Eberflus. So if that really does become an issue that continues throughout the year, and maybe it's been enough for other people already, but I think that you have every reason to fire him at this point, but I can understand why they're not. If they don't have somebody in the building that they think can put in place, well, one, I think that would be a problem. You wouldn't trust anybody to take over for him. But two, I guess that would technically be a good reason that you don't fire him yet. So I'll have another video about Eberflus and actually put potential coaches. So we'll get to that later. But let's talk about Shane Waldron. So Shane Waldron was in Seattle. He got play calling duties under Pete Carroll in 2021 with the Seattle Seahawks. He had a season where Russell Wilson was still the main quarterback there, and Geno Smith had to come in on occasion to try to help when there's injuries. Just nothing special. And he did fine. Actually, Shane Waldron's first year, they were number one in turnovers, so they were very good in that regard. And I believe they had a top 20 offense. It wasn't anything super special. Then his second season, they had one of the best offenses in the league. This was Geno Smith's resurgence. This is kind of how Shane Waldron made his name. He was the one that resurrected Geno Smith. He threw for 4,200 yards, 30 touchdowns, I think 10 or 11 interceptions. He had the highest completion percentage in the league at 70%. So it was an amazing season for Geno Smith, and everybody, Shane Waldron, he's going to be the guy. And his kind of key to success, and something that a lot of people talked about, was his how often he implemented the 12 personnel, which is two tight ends and one running back. I thought that was an interesting thought when the Bears hired him, because you've got Rome, Keenan, and DJ. That would mean one of them would be sitting on the bench with only having two wide receivers if you run that. And I'll get to why that didn't end up working out later. But yeah, so Shane Waldron was known for reviving Geno Smith and, being a good offensive play caller in there, and kind of fooled everybody, because if you look at the offensive coordinator job openings, he was one of the top options. Everybody was talking about, Shane Waldron was going to be the best. People talked about Cliff Kingsbury, which obviously seems like would have been a good option with how Jaden Daniels is going on over there in Washington. But either way, Shane Waldron was one of the top ones, and I don't think there was any Bears fans that were upset. I think they were happy because we had these issues with, Eberflus hires Luke Getsy, who had never called plays before. We had Matt Nagy as the previous coach, who was a coach that had never called plays before, who came in, and we kind of had this continuation of having these new coaches that haven't called plays before coming in and calling plays. And great. Now we've got this guy who's been calling plays for 3 years. He has this guy who was kind of just set aside and was just going to be looked at as a journeyman quarterback, looking like a starting caliber quarterback and having success in the league again. We need to get an offensive coordinator that do that. Well, we bring him in, and if you remember, we can talk about the goods with Waldron. Obviously, the first few weeks didn't look good. The last 3 weeks before the bye looked really good. We specifically versus the Panthers and the Jaguars, Caleb was throwing the ball all over the place. 4 touchdowns in London. I believe I saw a stat where I think he's the only player ever to have a 4 passing touchdown game in London. I could be wrong about that. It might be a rookie or something, but I think he's the only one in history to do that in London. So it was huge. And then we, all on our high horse going into the bye week. Then we have to play the Commanders. How's that going to go? Well, you guys remember how that went. And it is crazy to think about, like, if the ball just tipped 2 feet to the right, does Shane Waldron have his job? Do we turn into this spiral? Because that was the news for the whole next week. Everybody was talking about how Eberflus didn't call a timeout. He screwed up, and didn't, the offense did their job and came back, but then the defense let up. And then the play before the Hail Mary that was very important. Eberflus just said, we didn't care about that play. That play wasn't important. On the other side, Dan Quinn is saying that's the reason we were able to make the play, because we got those 14 yards. So it just seems like a huge lapse in coaching ability from Matt Eberflus, as well as the offense, not really being able to produce any offense until like the last 10 minutes of the game. Then you go, okay, well, now we've got the Cardinals and the Patriots, 2 games that we can absolutely win, and they fuck both of those up too. And then they finally go, we need to make a change. I honestly thought they would just demote Shane Waldron from play calling, because I don't think firing a bunch of people, it just doesn't sound like, obviously it made sense, but it just didn't sound good with your rookie quarterback trying to develop. And if they're instilling bad habits, maybe, then yeah, I guess you got to get them out of there. Just a tough call to make. And from the outside looking in, you don't love it. You'd prefer if your offensive coordinator would get to stick around for the first year while you're trying to develop your rookie quarterback. But they weren't able to do that. Now, specific things that Shane Waldron seemed like he was doing in those Jaguars and Panthers games was helping Caleb Williams fix his problem that he had in college of holding on to the ball too long and wanting to play hero ball, because he had made some mistakes in those first couple games where he would avoid the check down and try to go for the deep shot. And after the bye, he was doing all of those same things again. Now, granted, I did notice when I was watching, because I watched a few different, the Chase Daniel, all the quarterback breakdown, the Kurt Benkert, all the guys do breakdowns now. I watched a few of those. And in the most recent game, I just remember seeing so many plays where there's not a single Bears receiver, running back, tight end, whatever, at the line of scrimmage looking at the quarterback. And that's what a check down is supposed to be. It's supposed to be somebody that probably has eyes on the quarterback for most of the time so they can be the out, and close to the line of the scrimmage, because they're able to, usually that player is able to do something with their legs or make it downfield, not just do something random with their legs. That means run. I don't know why I said it like that, but they're supposed to be able to make plays with the ball in their hand. And there just wasn't any of that. I very rarely saw that. Now, you can say that Caleb has issues too with still, avoiding those checkdowns when they're there, but there was also not enough plays, in my opinions, where that was available. And especially with, the offensive line and how the interior of the offensive line was not doing, exceptionally well. I think you need to have that out. And a lot of the plays to me were a little too long developing. So I think it kind of stunted Caleb Williams' growth. And as I was saying, I think that the whole thing is, it's a combo of everything. So it's not just Waldron. It's not just the offensive line. It's not just Caleb Williams. It's not just the receivers. I mean, literally every part of it, it seemed like one thing or one or two things would go wrong on every play. Like if Caleb Williams threw the quick pass on time, he'd throw it to Keenan Allen or Rome Odunze, and they'd drop it. There's been a lot of unnecessary drops from a top 10 pick, in the NFL, and Keenan Allen, who's supposed to have some of the most sure hands in the NFL. He's had some very unnecessary drops. Now, you could maybe say that Caleb Williams is kind of firing the ball in there too fast, and I could listen to that too, but I think that's a big issue as well. And then you look at the offensive line. I heard a breakdown today where they were talking about how technically the offensive line has, in a lot of situations, been holding up as long as they need to. Um, Caleb Williams leads the league in sacks over 4 seconds at 15. He's been sacked 35 times. Now you can't just remove those 15 sacks, but that comes down to 20 then that are within 4 seconds, which is still not good. And every quarterback's going to have those that are over 4 seconds. And people like to make the argument, well, he's good at with pocket presence and moving around. So naturally, it's going to be a longer time. But the issue is a lot of times he still doesn't throw the ball away. Or he just takes a sack, and you can't be doing that. And those negative plays are what hurt us on a lot of drives because if you think about it, if you take a 4 or 5 yard loss, let's say running back first play goes five, yeah, let's say 4 or 5 yards. So we got a 2nd and 5. Now you get sacked on the next play. Now you're 3rd and 10. The Bears, it seems like to me, they're in 3rd and 10s all the time. And then you need not a super long developing play, but usually something a little longer than a quick drag route or a slant could work, but it's usually not breaking the line to gain. And then you run into issues there. So and then like I said, receivers, the separation hasn't been great. I've seen a lot of breakdowns where you look downfield and Caleb's scrambling out to the right, and there's just no separation from any of the receivers. You have DJ Moore giving up, and I could talk on this for 10 hours, but I guess all I'm trying to do here is say that I think yes, Shane Waldron's fired, and I would love to hope that Thomas Brown is going to steer this offense in the right direction to make progress. But what I'm trying to say is I think there is issues everywhere. And ultimately you can say it comes down to the coaching and that's why he got fired. But I also don't think Thomas Brown is magically just going to force Caleb Williams to make all those quick passes and force the interior of the offensive line to block better. It's going to take some time regardless. I was noticing a lot too, specifically in this Patriots game, that what the Patriots would do is they would spread their defensive line out super wide. And what was happening is, I believe it was Jeremiah Farms on the inside. He was beating Coleman Shelton and I think it was Ryan Bates fairly often. So he's able to get pressure on the inside. And Caleb Williams had a lot harder time getting out of the pocket because there was multiple times where the edge rushers would just contain. And then Caleb Williams would try to run free and run right into him. So it's just all over the place as far as the offensive scheme. I think they ran actually too much 5 wide receivers and not enough of the 12 personnel where you'll have a tight end in closer that can chip a guy on the line of scrimmage or that can even just stay to block or a running back stay to block because the offensive line wasn't doing enough, but Caleb Williams was holding onto the ball too long, but wide receivers weren't getting open and dropping the ball when they shouldn't have. And Shane Waldron was not drawing up plays that go to the strength of the offense. Maybe Caleb Williams with the deep routes downfield, but you can't execute those if you don't have good blocking and at least a check down or something that you could use as an out. Although again, another problem, Caleb doesn't use it very often. So there's problems coming from everywhere, and none of it's not all going to get resolved this season. So just don't think that Thomas Brown's going to come in and fix the whole thing. I'm going to have a Thomas Brown video out shortly too, so stay tuned for that. But that's going to be it for this one. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and have a great day.